The dual suns of Veros Prime cast their first light across the rotating city, painting the metallic skyline in shades of amber and rose. Kale adjusted his worn leather jacket, a relic from a life he no longer lived, and stared up at the alloy glass palace that dominated the orbital ring. Its crystalline spires reached toward the stars like frozen fingers, each one catching and fracturing the morning light into 1,000 rainbow splinters. He remembered when those spires had been home, when he had walked those corridors not as a stranger, but as Captain Kyle Devereaux, Royal Security Commander, trusted advisor to the throne, before the exile, before everything changed. "Identification!" demanded the obsidian guard at the palace entrance, its voice a metallic rasp that seemed to cut through the thin air of the ring station. Kale handed over his clearance chip, the one favor his old contacts had managed to secure for him. "I have an audience with Her Majesty." The guard's faceless visor revealed nothing as it scanned the chip. "Proceed. Weapons check mandatory." Kale spread his arms as the security field washed over him, revealing nothing more dangerous than the small cube tucked into his inner pocket. The liquid inside it glowed with a faint blue luminescence. Technically contraband, definitely against the planetary blockade, and absolutely necessary for what he needed to do. The throne room stretched before him like a cathedral of glass and light. Transparent floors revealed the void of space beneath, stars wheeling slowly as the orbital ring continued its eternal rotation. The ceiling was pure crystal, harvested from the deepest mines of Therion, refracting light in patterns that supposedly mapped the neural pathways of the first Verosian queen. And there, at the end of the impossibly long walkway, sat Queen Varea herself. She looked exactly as he remembered and nothing like his memories at all. Her face was the same, sharp cheekbones, eyes the color of distant nebulae, lips perpetually on the edge of a knowing smile. But she wore her power differently now. Heavier. The Aurelin armor encasing her shoulders and chest was new, its living metal shifting subtly with each breath she took, as though the armor itself were afraid to disappoint her. "Your Majesty," Kale said, stopping at the prescribed distance, close enough to be heard, far enough to pose no threat. "It's been 3 years." Queen Varea didn't respond. She merely tilted her head, the neural circuitry embedded in her temple catching the light. Behind her, 2 royal advisors exchanged glances. They hadn't expected him either. "I've brought you something," Kale continued, removing the cube from his pocket. The liquid inside swirled, as if sensing its exposure to the air. "Tanalian whiskey. From the Outer Rim." The Queen's gaze flickered to the cube, then back to his face. "The Outer Rim is under blockade by royal decree. Such contraband is grounds for immediate imprisonment." Her voice was exactly as he remembered, low, musical, with just enough of an edge to remind everyone that she had ordered executions with that same tone. "Then perhaps Your Majesty would prefer to have me arrested, rather than hear what I have to say." Kale held the cube up to the light. "This is just a courtesy gift, a reminder of better days." There were no better days for Veros, Captain. Only different crises. She emphasized his former title with faint disdain. "Your exile remains in effect. This audience is a courtesy, granted only because of your former service. State your business quickly." Kale felt his heart hammer against his ribs. He had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times during the long journey back to Veros Prime. But standing before her now, words failed him. The way she looked at him, as if he were a stranger, as if the nights they had spent planning Veros's defense against the Coalition had never happened, as if she had never whispered his name in the darkness of the royal chambers when all her guards thought she slept alone. "I've discovered something you need to know," he said finally, returning the cube to his pocket. "Something about why the Coalition withdrew 3 years ago. Something about the exile order you signed." For a fraction of a second, Varea's composure slipped, a tightening around her eyes, a slight intake of breath that made the living armor ripple across her chest. "Guards," she said, her gaze never leaving Cale's face. "Escort the former captain out. His audience is concluded." "Varia." The name slipped out before he could stop himself. "You will address Her Majesty with proper respect," snapped one of the advisors. A thin man with metallic implants framing his eyes. "Fine," Cale said, as the obsidian guards moved to flank him. He could feel the old anger rising, the sense of betrayal that had fueled him through 3 years of wandering the Outer Rim. "I'll go, but you'll miss me, Varia. You'll miss what I have to tell you." The Queen said nothing, her face an unreadable mask, as the guards escorted him from the throne room. The last thing Cale saw before the massive doors swung shut was her hand, tightening almost imperceptibly on the arm of her crystal throne. Outside the palace, Cale leaned against a railing and stared out at the endless expanse of space. The ringed city of Veros stretched away from him in both directions, a perfect circle of civilization suspended above the storm-racked planet below. In the distance, he could see the commercial district where he needed to go next. He had expected rejection, planned for it, even, but the cold dismissal in Varia's eyes had cut deeper than he anticipated. "Stupid," he muttered to himself. "What did you expect after 3 years? A tearful reunion?" Taking a deep breath of the filtered ring station air, Cale pushed himself away from the railing and headed toward the nearest transit tube. Plan B was already in motion. If Varia wouldn't listen willingly, he'd make sure she had no choice. The broken orbit bar hung from the underside of the ring station. Its exterior, a patchwork of salvaged ship hulls and transparent aluminum. Inside, the lighting was dim enough to disguise the questionable hygiene, but bright enough to spot trouble before it spotted you. Cale made his way to a booth in the back, where a lanky figure was already nursing a glass of something that glowed faintly purple. "Relax," Cale said, sliding into the seat across from his old friend. "You look terrible." Relax Tano grinned, revealing a row of teeth that had seen better days. "Marriage will do that to you, or so I hear. Not stupid enough to try it myself." He pushed the glass aside. "I assume the royal audience didn't go well, since you're here and not being fitted for new captain's bars." She wouldn't listen, barely even looked at me. "Could have told you that would happen. Did, in fact, multiple times." Relax signaled the bartender for another round. "So we're going with the backup plan?" Cale nodded, instinctively checking the cube in his pocket. "I need to get to Vorin. He's the only one who can decode the crystal." Relax's easy smile faded. "That's going to be a problem. After you contacted me, I did some digging. Vorin's not on Ceres Station anymore. Moved his whole operation to a mobile platform in the Aurelian Rift." "The Rift? That's suicide. The temporal mines from the Coalition War are still active out there. Apparently Vorin doesn't care much about living these days." Relax lowered his voice. "Word is, he's been experimenting with biomech integration. Gone full cyborg. But not the clean corporate kind. We're talking wetware. Biological computing. Nasty stuff." Cale swore under his breath. Vorin had always been eccentric, even when he was the Royal Science Division's top engineer. His fascination with the boundaries between organic and mechanical had made him invaluable during the war, and dangerous afterward. It was part of why Varia had exiled him 6 months before Cale. "I need him. Relax. He's the only one who can extract the data from this." Cale produced a small crystal shard from his other pocket, different from the whiskey cube. It glimmered with internal light, like a star trapped in glass. Relax whistled. "Is that what I think it is? A royal memory crystal? Those are coded to the Queen's neural signature. Anyone else tries to access it, it fries their brain. Hence Varin. He designed the security protocols." Cale tucked the crystal away again. "Can you get me to the rift?" "Can I?" "Yes. Will I? That's a different question entirely. Relax downed his drink in one gulp. You realize what you're asking, right? Breaking the blockade, entering a minefield, seeking out a mad scientist who's probably more machine than man at this point. All for what? Some closure with the queen who threw you away? It's not about closure, Kale said, though the denial sounded hollow, even to his own ears. It's about the truth. What's on this crystal changes everything, for Veros, for the Coalition, for Varea herself. Relax studied his friend's face for a long moment, then sighed dramatically. Fine, but you're paying for the fuel. And if we die, I'm blaming you in whatever afterlife we end up in. Deal. Kale couldn't help but smile. Despite everything, it felt good to have an ally again. How soon can we leave? My ship's docked in Bay 14. Needs some minor repairs, but we can be gone before the night cycle. Relax stood, adjusting the blaster holstered at his hip. Just so we're clear, if this goes sideways, which it absolutely will, I reserve the right to say I told you so with my dying breath. I'd expect nothing less. As they made their way out of the bar, Kale noticed two figures in nondescript clothing, watching them with too much interest. We've got company, he murmured to Relax. Palace security, civilian clothes. Already. That was fast. Relax didn't break stride. Split up at the next junction. Meet at the ship. They parted ways at the transit hub, Kale taking the direct route, while Relax disappeared into a maintenance corridor. By the time Kale reached Bay 14, he'd lost his tail through a series of quick turns and doubling back, old habits from his security days that had never quite died. Relax's ship, the Wayward Current, was exactly as Kale remembered it, a cobbled-together collection of parts that somehow managed to fly despite looking like it would fall apart at the first hint of atmospheric entry. The cargo hauler had seen better days, but its unremarkable appearance was precisely what made it perfect for their needs. You're late, Relax called from the open cargo bay. I've already had to bribe the dockmaster twice to delay our departure slot. Palace security is looking for us. We need to go now. Relax swore colorfully. Get aboard. We'll finish the repairs in transit. The ship's interior was as chaotic as its exterior suggested. Cargo netting covered most surfaces, securing crates of dubious legality alongside spare parts and personal effects. Kale made his way to the cockpit, where Relax was already bringing the engines online. Welcome aboard the Wayward Current, came a crisp, feminine voice from the ship's speakers. Detecting elevated heart rates and stress hormones. Are we fleeing from authorities again, Relax? Not now, Nessa, Relax muttered, his fingers dancing across the control panels. Just get us clearance for departure. Departure clearance denied, the AI responded almost immediately. Bay doors are locked down on security override. Kale looked out the viewport and saw a squad of palace guards entering the docking bay. They moved faster than I expected. Varea must have taken my visit more seriously than she let on. Or she just wants you back in a cell. Relax flipped several switches overhead. Nessa, emergency protocols. Backdoor the docking system. That would be illegal, the AI pointed out, though Kale noted she was already doing exactly what Relax had asked. The bay doors began to slide open, overriding the lockdown. Hang on to something, Relax warned, as he punched the thrusters. The Wayward Current shot forward, scraping against the partially open bay doors, with a sound like screaming metal. Alarms blared behind them as they accelerated away from the ring station. Through the rear viewports, Kale could see security vessels beginning to mobilize. They won't follow us to the rift, Relax said confidently. Even palace security isn't that dedicated. Let's hope not. Kale strapped himself into the co-pilot seat. How long until we reach Vorin? At maximum speed, 18 hours. But we'll need to approach the rift slowly, unless you want to end up spread across multiple timelines. Relax set the navigation computer and leaned back. Better get comfortable, and maybe explain to me exactly what's on that crystal that's worth all this trouble. Kale fingered the crystal in his pocket. The truth about why Vareya exiled us both, and why the Coalition really withdrew when they had the war all but won. That's cryptic and unhelpful. I don't know all the details myself, Kale admitted. But 3 months ago, I ran into a former Coalition intelligence officer in a bar on the Outer Rim. He recognized me, got drunk, started talking about how the Queen had pulled off the greatest deception in galactic history, said the evidence was in the Royal Archives. So you broke into the archives? That's impressively stupid, even for you. I had help. An old contact in the palace staff. She got me this crystal, said it contained Vareya's personal logs from the end of the war. Kale stared out at the stars streaking past. Whatever's on it, the Coalition officer seemed to think it was enough to restart the war if it ever got out. Relak was silent for a moment. And you want to restart the war? Haven't enough people died already? I want the truth, Kale said firmly. After that, I don't know. I just know I can't move on until I understand why she did what she did. Fair enough. Relak checked their course. Get some rest. I'll wake you when we reach the rift perimeter. Kale tried to sleep in the cramped crew quarters, but his mind kept returning to Vareya's face, the cold distance in her eyes. So different from the woman he had known during the war. The woman who had once trusted him with her life, with the security of her entire world. What had changed? What secret was so dangerous that she would exile the people closest to her to protect it? He was still pondering these questions when Relak's voice came over the intercom. Rise and shine, Captain. We're approaching the Aurelian Rift. The view screen in the cockpit showed what looked like a tear in the fabric of space itself. A long, jagged gash of swirling energy and distorted stars. The aftermath of an experimental weapon deployed in the final days of the Coalition War. The rift was a wound in space-time that had never healed. A region where the normal laws of physics became mere suggestions. Charming vacation spot, Kale remarked, taking his seat beside Relak. How do we find Varen and all that? Nessa's been scanning for artificial structures. There's something about 30 kilometers into the rift. A modified silicate mothership. Has to be him. No one else would be crazy enough to live that deep. Can we reach it safely? Relak's laugh held no humor. Define safely. We can try. Nessa's plotted a course through the known minefields. But the temporal distortions mean that what was safe yesterday might not be safe today. I've calculated the optimal approach vector, Nessa interjected, her voice unnervingly calm. However, I should note that my simulations give us only a 63% chance of survival. Those are better odds than I usually get, Relak said with forced cheer. Shields at maximum, initiating rift approach. The wayward current edged forward into the swirling energies of the rift. Almost immediately, Kale felt a strange sensation, as if his body were slightly out of sync with itself, a common effect of the temporal distortions. Temporal mine, 2 o'clock, Nessa warned suddenly. Adjusting course. The ship banked sharply, narrowly avoiding a spherical object that pulsed with sickly green light. Kale had seen the aftermath of temporal mine explosions during the war, ships with their crews aged to dust, or frozen in a moment of terror for eternity, or worst of all, temporally shredded, with different parts of the vessel and its occupants existing in different time streams. Another cluster ahead, Nessa reported, unable to plot safe passage. Manual control, Relak ordered, taking the helm himself. His hands moved with practiced precision as he guided the ship through the minefield, each turn bringing them dangerously close to destruction. Kale gripped his seat as the ship lurched and spun. Through the viewport, he could see the rift energies intensifying, reality itself seeming to warp and twist around them. This is insane, he muttered. Even Vorin isn't worth this risk. Too late now, Relak replied through gritted teeth. We go forward or we die trying to turn around. A sudden impact rocked the ship, alarms blaring throughout the cockpit. Temporal shear wave, Nessa announced. Minor hull damage. Internal chronometric disruption detected. What does that mean? Kale demanded. It means time inside the ship might run a little faster or slower than outside for a while, Relak explained, not taking his eyes off the controls. Nothing to worry about unless you had plans for the next few subjective hours. Another impact. Stronger this time. The lights flickered, and for a moment, Kale saw multiple versions of Relak at the controls. Slightly different positions, different expressions, all occupying the same space. That's not good, Relak said, his voice echoing strangely. Nessa, temporal stabilizers. Stabilizers engaged, the AI responded, her voice fluctuating in pitch. Attempting to synchronize our time stream. The ghostly images of Relak gradually merged back into one as the ship's systems compensated for the temporal disruption. Ahead, through the swirling chaos of the rift, Kale could make out a massive structure, the silicate mothership, transformed by Voron's modifications into something that resembled a hybrid of machine and living organism. There it is, Relak said, relief evident in his voice. Now we just need to dock without him blowing us out of the sky. Incoming transmission, Nessa announced. A holographic projection appeared above the console. A figure that only vaguely resembled the Voron that Kale remembered. The former Royal Engineer's body had been extensively modified, with mechanical components seamlessly integrated into his flesh. Tubes and wires emerged from his skull and spine, connecting to unseen systems. One eye had been replaced with a multifaceted optical array that moved independently of the other. Identify yourselves, Voron demanded, his voice layered with mechanical undertones. You have entered restricted space. Voron, it's Relak Tano, and I've brought an old friend, Kale Devereaux. The modified eye swiveled to focus on Kale. Captain Devereaux, the Queen's loyal hound. Until she put you down. That is. Voron's organic eye narrowed. Why have you come? I need your help, Kale said simply. To decode a royal memory crystal. Voron was silent for a moment, the mechanical components of his face whirring softly. Interesting. Dock at the ventral port. Any deviation from the approach vector I'm sending will result in your immediate destruction. The transmission cut off, replaced by a set of coordinates. Charming as ever, Relak muttered, adjusting their course. I don't like this, Kale. The Voron I knew was eccentric. This is something else entirely. We don't have a choice. Kale watched as they approached the massive mothership. Just be ready to leave in a hurry if things go wrong. The docking procedure was tense but uneventful. As the airlock cycled, Kale checked his sidearm, a precaution he hoped would be unnecessary but suspected might be vital. I'll stay with the ship, Relak said. Keep the engines hot. If you're not back in 2 hours, I'm coming in after you. Fair enough. Kale took a deep breath and stepped through the airlock into Voron's domain. The interior of the mothership was unlike anything Kale had ever seen. The corridors seemed almost organic, with walls that pulsed subtly, as if breathing. Lighting came from bioluminescent strips that followed his movement, illuminating his path while leaving the rest in shadow. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and something else, something biological and not entirely pleasant. Follow the lights, came Voron's voice from hidden speakers. Any deviation will be considered hostile. Kale moved forward, acutely aware of subtle movements in his peripheral vision. Mechanical servitors, perhaps, or something more sinister. The corridor eventually opened into a vast chamber that must have once been the mothership's bridge. Now, it was a laboratory and living space combined, filled with equipment that blurred the line between technology and biology. At the center stood Voron, suspended in a column of glowing plasma. Tubes and cables connected his modified body to the ship itself, making it unclear where the man ended and the machine began. "Captain Devereaux," Vorin said, his voice coming not from his mouth, but from speakers throughout the chamber. "You look remarkably unchanged for a man in exile." "Wish I could say the same for you," Cale replied, stopping at what he hoped was a safe distance. "What have you done to yourself, Vorin?" "Evolution, Captain. The next stage of existence." The plasma around Vorin shifted, allowing him to step closer without disconnecting from the ship's systems. "But you didn't brave the rift to discuss philosophy. You mentioned a royal memory crystal." Cale produced the crystal from his pocket. "I need to know what's on it. You designed the encryption." "Indeed I did." Vorin's mechanical eye whirred as it focused on the crystal. "Neural coded to Her Majesty. Attempting to bypass that security would kill you, or worse." "Can you decode it?" "Of course." A mechanical tendril extended from the floor, hovering expectantly. "But why should I? What does a loyal servant of the Queen who cast us both aside have to offer me?" "I'm not her servant anymore," Cale said. "Not since the exile. I just want the truth." "Truth," Vorin repeated, the word distorted by his speakers. "An interesting currency. But I prefer something more tangible for my services." The mechanical tendril retreated. "Your ship, it has an AI system, does it not? Quite sophisticated for a cargo hauler." Cale tensed. "Nessa belongs to Relac. She's not mine to trade." "A pity." Vorin began to turn away. "Then I'm afraid I can't help you." "Wait." Cale stepped forward, mind racing. "What exactly do you want with an AI?" Vorin's organic eye fixed on him with disturbing intensity. "My integration with this ship is incomplete. The silicate systems resist certain aspects of the merge. A dedicated AI core would facilitate the final stage of my evolution." "You want to absorb Nessa into whatever this is?" Cale gestured at the hybrid of man and machine before him. "She's a sentient being, Vorin. As am I. More so, perhaps, than either of us was before." Vorin's mechanical components shifted restlessly. "The crystal, or the AI, Captain. Choose." Cale's hand moved to his weapon. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." Vorin didn't seem concerned by the implied threat. "And I wouldn't recommend violence. This entire chamber is an extension of my nervous system. You would be dead before your finger completed its squeeze on the trigger." As if to demonstrate, mechanical tendrils rose from the floor around Cale, each one tipped with what looked like a surgical cutting tool. "The crystal contains information that could prevent another war," Cale said, desperately trying to appeal to whatever humanity remained in Vorin. "Millions of lives could depend on it." "And why should I care about those lives?" Vorin's voice was coldly logical. "Did they care when the Queen exiled me for my dangerous research? Did they protest when my life's work was confiscated? My name struck from the scientific records?" The tendrils moved closer. "The AI or nothing, Captain." Cale stared at the crystal in his hand. 3 years of searching, of planning, all for this moment. And now he had to choose between his mission and Relac's trusted companion. "I need to consult with Relac," he said finally. "It's his AI to give, not mine." Vorin seemed to consider this. "Very well. You have 5 minutes. Use the ship's communicator." He gestured to a console nearby. Cale moved to the console, keeping a wary eye on Vorin and the threatening tendrils. He activated the comm system. "Relac, it's Cale. We have a situation." "Let me guess," came Relac's voice, tinged with static from the rift's interference. "Vorin wants something insane in exchange for his help." "He wants Nessa. Says he needs her AI core to complete his integration with the ship." There was a long silence. Then, "Put her on." "What?" "Put Nessa on the comm. I want to talk to her." Cale glanced at Vorin, who nodded permission. He adjusted the communicator settings to include Nessa in the conversation. "I'm here. Relac." The AI's voice came through clearly. I've been monitoring. I understand the situation. Of course you do. Relak's voice softened in a way Kale had rarely heard. What do you think, Nessa? It's your existence on the line. I've analyzed all available data, Nessa replied after a moment. The contents of the crystal have a 78% probability of containing information critical to galactic stability. My core architecture is compatible with Voron's integration needs, though the process would dissolve my current personality matrix. In plain language, please, Relak interrupted. I would cease to exist as Nessa. The AI clarified. My computational capabilities would continue within Voron's hybrid system, but my consciousness, as you know it, would end. That's not happening, Relak said firmly. Kale, we're leaving, now. Wait, Nessa interjected. There is another option. A partial core transfer. I could create a subdivision of my processing capabilities, approximately 30% of my total function. It would be sufficient to assist Voron's integration while preserving my primary consciousness. Would that work? Kale asked, looking at Voron. The cybernetic engineer tilted his head, mechanical components whirring as he considered. Insufficient. I require a complete AI architecture. 70%, Nessa countered. My primary personality would be significantly diminished, but could eventually recover basic functions through adaptive learning. Nessa, no, Relak protested. You don't have to do this. I am making a choice. Relak. The AI responded with surprising emotion. Is that not what sentience is about? The ability to choose one's path, even when that path involves sacrifice? Kale watched as conflicting emotions played across Voron's partly human face. Acceptable, he said finally. 70% core transfer, but I will select which components to extract. I have my own conditions, Nessa stated. My memory banks remain intact. My relationship parameters with Relak remain prioritized in the remaining architecture, and the crystal must be decoded first, before any transfer begins. Voron's mechanical eye rotated rapidly. Processing. Agreed, but the captain stays as collateral until the transfer is complete. No deal, Relak cut in. Kale leaves with the decoded crystal, then you get the AI transfer. Simultaneous exchange, Voron countered. The crystal begins decoding as Nessa's core transfer initiates. Both complete together, or neither completes at all. Kale took a deep breath. Agreed. Before Relak could protest further, he added, It's the best we're going to get, Relak. And Nessa's right. What's on this crystal could prevent another war. The silence from the communicator spoke volumes about Relak's feelings. But finally he said, Fine. But Kale, if anything happens to her, anything beyond what's agreed, I'm holding you personally responsible. Understood, Kale turned to Voron. We have a deal. How do we proceed? Voron gestured, and a complex apparatus rose from the floor beside him. Place the crystal in the receptor. When your AI arrives, we can begin. The next hour was tense with technical preparations. Relak reluctantly brought a portable data core containing a partitioned version of Nessa to Voron's chamber. His face, a mask of barely contained anger and worry. The core was connected to Voron's systems, while the crystal sat in a specialized reader, surrounded by equipment that hummed with power. Beginning simultaneous procedures, Voron announced, his voice merging with the ship's systems. Crystal decryption initiated. AI core integration commencing. The chamber filled with light as both processes began. Kale and Relak watched anxiously as progress indicators showed the slow extraction of data from both sources. 40% complete, Voron reported, his voice fluctuating as his systems absorbed parts of Nessa's architecture. The crystal's security layers are impressive. My own work, at its finest. Nessa, Relak called uncertainly. Are you still there? Functionality. Diminished, came the AI's voice, noticeably slower than before. But core identity, preserved. I am still Nessa. Relax. Relax's hands clenched into fists, but he remained silent, watching the progress indicators climb. 50%, 60, 70. Crystal decryption nearing completion, Vorin announced. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. What's on it? Kale demanded. Patience, Captain. All will be revealed when both processes are complete. The indicators reached 90%. Then 95. Kale felt his heart pounding as they approached the final stage. Transfer complete, Vorin declared. His voice noticeably different, smoother, with echoes of Nessa's inflections merged with his own. Crystal decryption complete. A holographic projection appeared in the center of the chamber. Queen Varaya, as she had been 3 years ago, seated in her private chambers rather than on the formal throne. Her expression was unguarded in a way Kale had rarely seen, even during their closest moments. Personal log. Royal Archive. The hologram began. The coalition forces have withdrawn. The war is over, though few understand why. Fewer still know the price of this peace. Varaya's holographic form looked down, a gesture of rare vulnerability. I have ordered the exile of Engineering Chief Vorin for his role in developing the quantum resonance weapon. The official record will cite dangerous research practices and ethical violations, both true, yet incomplete. Kale felt his breath catch. The quantum resonance weapon had been a rumored doomsday device, never officially acknowledged by the royal government. The weapon works, holographic Varaya continued. A single deployment could destroy not just a fleet, but an entire system, perhaps more. The coalition learned of its existence through channels I have yet to identify. Their withdrawal was not a defeat, but a calculation. They could not risk such a weapon being used, yet could not overcome it through conventional means. She paused, looking directly ahead, as if making eye contact with her future self. But the weapon is unstable. Vorin's own simulations show a 62% probability that deployment would create a cascade effect, potentially destroying Veros, along with the target. I cannot risk such a weapon remaining in our arsenal, nor can I allow it to become known that we threatened its use to end the war. Another pause. Longer this time. Tomorrow, I will order the exile of Captain Kyle Devereaux, my chief of security and most trusted advisor. He knows too much, suspects even more. His loyalty to Veros is absolute, but his loyalty to me. She looked away. That is the problem. He would follow me into fire, which is precisely why he must go. He would never allow me to shoulder this burden alone if he knew the truth. Kale felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath him. 3 years of anger, of confusion, of feeling betrayed, all built on a foundation he hadn't understood at all. I exile him because I cannot bear to see what would happen if he stayed. Varaya continued, her voice barely above a whisper now. If he knew what I had done, what I had threatened to maintain our sovereignty, he would either lose faith in everything he believed about me, or worse, he would understand and forgive me. I deserve neither outcome. She looked up again, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I exile him because I love him, and because some burdens must be carried alone. The hologram flickered and died, leaving the chamber in sudden silence. Well, Vorin said after a moment, his voice still carrying traces of Nessa. That was certainly worth the price. Kale couldn't speak. The revelation had struck him like a physical blow. All this time, he had believed his exile was punishment for some unspoken failure, or political expedience, or, in his darkest moments, because Varaya had simply tired of him. Never had he imagined it was an act of protection, misguided as it might have been. The crystal, he managed finally. I need it back. Vorin nodded, the apparatus releasing the small shard. Our transaction is complete. Take your truth, Captain. whatever good it may do you. Nessa, Relax said anxiously. We're leaving now. Core functions. Operational. Came the AI's response from Relax's portable unit, her voice noticeably degraded. Personality matrix. Fragmented but stable. I will. Recover. Relax. Relax shot a venomous look at Vorin. This isn't over. On the contrary, Vorin replied, settling back into his plasma column as the mechanical tendrils retreated. It is precisely over. For all of us. The past is decoded. What you do with it now is your own affair. They left Vorin's chamber in silence, making their way back to the wayward current with the crystal and what remained of Nessa. Only when they were safely aboard and disengaging from the mothership did Relax speak. Was it worth it? He asked, not looking at Kale as he plotted their course out of the rift. Knowing why she sent you away? Kale stared at the crystal in his hand. I don't know yet, but I know what I have to do next. You're going back to her. It wasn't a question. I have to. She needs to know that I know the truth now. Relax sighed heavily. You realize she might have you arrested the moment you set foot in the palace again? Or worse. It's a risk I'll take. Kale pocketed the crystal. I'm sorry about Nessa. I never meant for any of this to happen. She made her choice, Relax said, his voice tight. Said it was what sentience is all about. The ability to choose, even when the choice involves sacrifice. He shook his head. Sometimes, I think she's more human than either of us. The journey back through the rift was tense but uneventful, as if the temporal distortions themselves recognized the gravity of their mission and granted them safe passage. Once clear, Relax set course for Veros Prime at maximum speed. Palace security will be waiting for us, he warned, as they approached the orbital ring. I can get you close, but after that, you're on your own. That's all I need. Kale checked his equipment one last time. Drop me at Junction 7. There's a maintenance access point that leads directly to the Royal Residential Sector. From security chief to infiltrator. Quite the career change. Despite the sarcasm, Relax's expression was concerned. Be careful, Kale. Whatever her reasons were, she's still the queen. She still has the power to do worse than exile you. I know. Kale clasped his friend's shoulder. Thank you, Relax, for everything. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you're not executed for treason. But Relax returned the gesture, a silent acknowledgement of their shared journey. The wayward current slipped past the outer security perimeter of Veros Prime, using transponder codes that Relax had acquired through means he refused to specify. They docked briefly at Junction 7, just long enough for Kale to disembark before security vessels could intercept them. Good luck, Relax called as the airlock closed between them. You're going to need it. The maintenance access point was exactly where Kale remembered it, though the security protocols had been updated since his time as captain. It took him 15 minutes to bypass the first layer of defenses, another 10 to navigate the narrow service tunnels that ran beneath the polished floors of the royal residence. Finally, he emerged into a darkened corridor that he recognized immediately, the private wing, where Varea retreated when the weight of the crown became too much to bear. The fact that he hadn't been captured yet suggested either incredible luck or, more worryingly, that she knew he was coming and had ordered security to let him pass. He found her in her study, a circular room with walls of transparent crystal that offered a panoramic view of the stars. She stood with her back to the door, the ceremonial armor discarded in favor of a simple dress of midnight blue. Her hair, free from its formal arrangement, fell in waves down her back. I wondered when you would return, she said without turning. After your visit to Voren, I assumed it would be sooner rather than later. Kale stepped into the room, letting the door close behind him. You knew. Of course I knew. Now she turned, and he could see that her face was as unguarded as it had been in the hologram. I'm still queen. My security forces tracked your ship to the Aurelian Rift. It wasn't difficult to deduce your purpose. Then, why let me get this far? Why not have me arrested the moment I set foot on Veros Prime? Varea moved to a small table where a familiar cube sat, the Tenalian whiskey he had brought on his first visit. She opened it, the blue liquid catching the starlight as she poured 2 glasses. "Because I wanted to know what you would do with the truth," she said, offering him one of the glasses. "Whether you would use it as a weapon against me, or something else entirely." Kale accepted the glass but didn't drink. "You exiled me to protect me. I exiled you because I couldn't bear to see the look in your eyes when you learned what I had done." Varea took a sip of the whiskey, closing her eyes briefly at the taste. A weapon that could destroy worlds, held over the heads of our enemies like a cosmic guillotine. It went against everything you believed about just warfare, about honorable victory. You should have trusted me with the truth. Perhaps, she set her glass down, moving closer to him. But I was younger then, more afraid of losing your respect than I was of losing you entirely. A miscalculation, as it turned out. Kale pulled the crystal from his pocket, holding it between them. "You said you loved me, in the recording." Varea's composure slipped, just for a moment. "Yes. Present tense, not past." A slip of the tongue, perhaps, but her eyes told a different story. Kale set his untouched drink aside and stepped closer, until barely a handspan separated them. 3 years. Varea. 3 years of thinking you had cast me aside for some political convenience. 3 years of trying to hate you and failing miserably at it. And now, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Now that you know the truth?" Instead of answering, Kale brought his hand to her face, gently tracing the line of her jaw. She didn't pull away. "The quantum resonance weapon," he said quietly. "What happened to it?" "Dismantled. The plans destroyed. Vorin was the only one who understood the technology fully, and with his exile, you made sure it could never be rebuilt." She nodded. "The official record states that it was a theoretical project that proved non-viable. Only the coalition leadership knows otherwise, and they have as much reason to keep the secret as we do. And the price of that secret was Vorin's sanity, and my exile. And my solitude," Varea added, her eyes never leaving his. 3 years of ruling alone, of carrying the weight of that decision, of missing you every day and knowing it was my own choice that sent you away. Kale's hand moved to the back of her neck, drawing her closer. "I should be furious with you. You have every right to be. And yet all I can think about is how much time we've wasted." He leaned forward until their foreheads touched. "No more secrets. Varea, no more noble sacrifices. Whatever burdens you carry, we carry them together from now on." "I'm still queen," she reminded him, though her hands had found their way to his chest, fingers curling into the fabric of his jacket. "Some burdens come with the crown. Then I'll help you bear the crown too," he smiled faintly. "I was rather good at my job, you know, before I was exiled." "The best," she agreed, a matching smile tugging at her lips. "Captain Kyle Devereaux, Royal Security Commander. It has a certain ring to it. Does this mean my exile is officially over?" In answer, Varea closed the last distance between them, her lips meeting his, in a kiss that held 3 years of regret and longing. There was no music, no audience, just the two of them against the backdrop of stars, a private surrender more meaningful than any public decree could ever be. When they finally parted, Varea's expression was serious again. "There will be complications, questions about your return, political maneuvering from those who preferred you gone. Let them maneuver," Kale said, keeping her close. "We've faced worse together." "Yes," she agreed, resting her head against his shoulder as they both looked out at the stars that had separated them for so long. "I suppose we have." In the distance, The first light of Verus Prime's dual suns began to creep over the horizon of the planet below, painting the orbital ring in shades of amber and rose, the promise of a new day, a new beginning, not an ending, but a continuation of what had been interrupted 3 years before. A different kind of return from exile, a different kind of homecoming,